Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Texas Insider TV, brought to you by SpeedStream. I'm Jim Cardle. We're pleased to be able to visit today with Congressman Lamar Smith from the 21st Congressional District out of San Antonio and Chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. Congressman, thank you for joining us.
Jim, always good to be with you. Appreciate being on.
You've been with us before. We appreciate your time, and I want to get started, Congressman, immediately because of the issue of jobs in this economy these days. You announced last week, and we covered on Texas Insider, you're holding a jobs fair next week here in Austin at UT, Tuesday the 10th. Talk a little bit about your jobs fair, if you would.
Be happy to, and I ought to say that Travis County and this area of Texas is actually better off than the country. Our unemployment rate is a little lower than the country, but there are still far too many people without jobs, either unemployed or underemployed. They're working part-time when they wish they were working full-time. And what we have is a job fair next Tuesday, April 10th. It's from 10 o'clock in the morning till 2 o'clock in the afternoon at the Sam Erwin Center at the University of Texas. And I encourage anyone who is looking for a job to come. We're going to try to match these individuals looking for jobs with employers. And we have almost 50 employers already signed up for this job fair. They'll be at their tables. They'll be ready to interview people, talk to people, bring your resume, and come prepared to talk to these individuals who are looking for new employees.
That's some real constituent service there. Certainly helpful for citizens here in Central Texas and Austin. Again, 10 to 2 o'clock. You said this, the Sam Erwin. I think you meant the Frank Erwin.
Frank Erwin Center at the
Sam
University of
Rayburn,
Texas, yeah.
Frank Erwin, from 10 to 2 next Tuesday the 10th.
That is correct.
And then if I could, I want to jump right in and ask you about probably the number one issue on most folks' minds. We've had the recent Supreme Court arguments, both by the Obama administration and from 25 states' attorney generals. You're chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. I understand you were there at the Supreme Court. And here earlier this week, we've had the president message and essentially say some comments to the Supreme Court, which may or may not be helpful. But talk about this case, if you would, for a minute.
Jim, lots to talk about there. As chairman of the Judiciary Committee, I had a hearing on whether the health care bill was constitutional or not. I happen to think that it is not. Certainly the individual mandate, where for the first time in history, the Congress, the federal government, is telling everybody in America to buy a certain service, in this case a health care plan, is, I think, unconstitutional, but that's up to the Supreme Court to decide. Last week, the Supreme Court had 3 days of oral arguments on this particular health care bill. I was there for Wednesday morning arguments, and it is just fascinating to see the 9 Supreme Court justices and how quickly they ask questions of the attorneys who represent either side of the case. And I have to say, on the basis of the questions that were asked, I agree with a lot of the commentators that it looks like to me there may be 5 justices who have real questions about whether this health care bill is constitutional or not. And for me, that was good news. Frankly, in the House, we've now voted 26 or 27 times to either repeal Obamacare or to reform it.
Wow.
We cannot have the government telling people what kind of procedures they're going to have, when they're allowed to have them, and at the same time increasing the cost of the health care delivery system. When President Obama was pushing this health care bill 2 years ago, he promised the American people it would reduce costs. The Congressional Budget Office now says it's actually going to dramatically increase costs. The president promised the American people that they like their physician, they were going to be able to keep their own doctor. Turns out that's not the case. So not much of what we were told about this health care bill turns out to be the truth, and that's another reason to look at it with suspicion.
So you're out traveling the district. You've got some new territory, some new voters. Is this something that you're finding? You're on recess right now. Is this something you're finding people are paying attention to?
That is absolutely the case. In Travis County, I hope to represent 190,000 people. And when I'm out talking to individuals, the 2 top issues are excessive government spending and our debt and our deficit, which is going up by thousands of dollars every second, and health care plan. People don't like the government telling them what to do. We don't believe in a one-size-fits-all where the government is mandating that individuals buy a certain type of health care policy. So health care, government spending, the debt, the deficit, all that are the concerns that I hear about here in Travis County, and I'd have to say throughout my district. I wanted to mention, you brought it up a minute ago, that President Obama, in the last day or two, for the first time, I'm hearing a president be critical of the Supreme Court, really trying to intimidate them.
It's fairly remarkable, to say the
Yeah,
least.
maybe it's no surprise. This isn't the first time that the president has shown disrespect towards the Supreme Court. That State of the Union address over a year ago, he criticized the Supreme Court, and they're sitting in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they can't reply to what he says, but that's the first time, to my knowledge, that you have a president criticize the Supreme Court directly sitting in front of them.
And if I remember correctly, there were one of the justices or two that maybe nodded their heads in agreement or disagreement.
Justice Alito, I think, nodded his head back and forth and said that's not true, or something along those lines. And for the president to say if the Supreme Court overturns this health care bill and deems it unconstitutional, for him to say that's unprecedented, he knows better. He used to be a constitutional law professor in Chicago. He knows the Supreme Court routinely overturns bills of Congress. And so it's a little surprising and very unpresidential for him to act like that. And, I hope the Supreme Court will do exactly what they think is right. And if they feel that it's unconstitutional, they should overturn it, as they have other bills that have come before the Supreme Court. But the president should not be. He comes awfully close to trying to intimidate the Supreme Court. I think it may even backfire, to tell you the truth. I don't think the Supreme Court probably appreciates the President of the United States publicly trying to intimidate or even possibly threaten them.
I guess only time will tell. Let me ask in that regards, I believe it's been mentioned, and not to put you on the spot, but are we reasonably to expect, I think early June is when the decision may be handed down?
That is when we expect the Supreme Court to announce publicly their decision. Of course, they will have decided before that, but believe me, there's no leaks out of the Supreme Court these days, and so I doubt that we know until June.
Okay, you mentioned jobs and the effects things like the Obamacare law has and what your constituents are talking about. I also want to talk prior to joining us today, and again, folks, we're talking to Lamar Smith, Congressman from San Antonio and Chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, but people don't realize often right here in Texas what a large sector of our economy is dependent on, down in Houston, on NASA, on space exploration, certainly the defense industry with Fort Hood and all you've got down in San Antonio. But you were over at O. Henry Middle School talking to the astronauts in space. Talk a little bit about that.
Oh, that was one of the most exciting things I've ever done as a member of Congress. When we were at O. Henry Middle School here in Austin this morning, and at precisely 10:20 this morning, we were able to get a downlink from the International Space Station, which is, of course, 230 miles above us, up in the sky. And we had arranged all this ahead of time, and it was 2 or 3 months in the planning, and a member of Congress has to be present for us to pull this off. But this is the first time I've done this anywhere in my district. And Travis is my second most populous county in the 21st Congressional District, so that's why I'm here so often.
Okay.
And we had this downlink, and literally there were a dozen middle school students at O. Henry that were asking the astronauts in real time questions about, what do you like about being up there? What do you miss? What do you eat? All those kinds of questions. And here are 3 astronauts on the screen live responding to the students from Austin, Texas. I've just never seen anything like it, and hopefully these young kids will get inspired. Who knows, they may study math and science a little bit more than they might have before, and that's quite frankly one of the ideas. But it was exciting. As you say, we have NASA here in Texas, located down in Houston, and Houston Control was involved in this as well. They're the ones that were sending the signals from the International Space Station. But I tell you, those children were just looking at that screen and talking to those astronauts and hanging on every word. And you can actually see the International Space Station if you can go to the internet and figure out when it's flying over your house. You go outside at night and it looks like a satellite going through, but it's really the International Space Station, and you can pretty well determine when it's going to fly over your house or over your city or whatever it might be. But it was an exciting time. As I say, it's the first time I've ever done that as a member of Congress, and I'm on the Science, Space, and Technology Committee. In fact, I'm a member of the Space Subcommittee. I'm Vice Chairman of it, so it was sort of a natural thing to do, and I thought O. Henry Middle School here in Austin was a good place to do it.
Almost makes one think that if we can put a man on the moon, we might be able to balance the federal budget or something along
that
those
may be
lines.
asking a lot. I hope
that'll be another discussion.
We can, by the way.
Finally, I want to wrap up and ask you a final thing. We've got the May 29th primaries coming up, but in terms of jobs and the number one issue of the economy these days, what can we expect here in the next month or two? I know they passed a transportation bill the other day, which is crucial to big states like here in Texas. But are you all going to be able to do anything to address economic concerns of the country
I think we're going to
in
be
this
able to
environment?
do two things. The big transportation bill, we did an extension through June. We're going to come back with a 2-year or 5-year new transportation bill, and that's going to help the community in Austin and other communities up and down
Okay.
35. The other thing we're going to do, and we've passed a bill, and we hope the president will sign off on it, and that's to reduce taxes on small businesses by 20%. Small businesses create 70% of the new jobs in America. So if we want a healthy economy, if we want to create more jobs, we need to encourage the small businesses to invest more, produce more, and therefore create more jobs. And by cutting their taxes, we think we'll give them an incentive to do just that.
Well, Congressman, I should mention you just last week were the recipient by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, I believe, of the Free Enterprise Award.
Yes.
Congratulations on that and
Thank
your
you.
hard work on behalf of Texans in your 21st Congressional District. We really appreciate you coming by, and respect for your time. We'll leave it there.
Thank you, Jim.
Folks, be sure and tune back in for another edition of Texas Insider TV. In the meantime, if you're interested in attending the Congressman's Job Fair next Tuesday, we want them to visit Lamar Smith.
.house.gov, G-O-V. That's my website, lamarsmith.house.gov. Frank Urban Center, 10 to 2, next Tuesday. If you need a job, nothing could be more important to you or your family, please stop by. I've got 50 employers waiting for you.
Good work there. Appreciate you joining us.
Sure.
Folks, tune back in. I'm Jim Cardle. Remember, you're either an insider or you're not. Thanks for joining us.